Okay, so I chose poverty trap. The concept of a poverty trap refers to a situation where individuals or households are unable to escape from poverty due to a combination of economic, social, and institutional factors. More than likely, it's characterized by self-reinforcing cycle of poverty, where conditions that keep people in poverty almost make it difficult for them to improve their economic situation. So, oh, by the way, hi, I'm Kiyomi, macroeconomics. Um, I really enjoyed taking this class. I actually learned a lot more in this 4 weeks than I have in microeconomics. Um, so, just a few fast facts, or a fast fact. A poverty trap is a set of events likely to keep a person in poverty. Escaping poverty can be possible, but more than likely not. A lot of times we have some who are inheritance children, and you have somebody who basically just grew up without the possible resources. I mean, like a family who's struggling, low income households, um, people with limited access to credit, limited education, poor health and nutrition, um, a weak infrastructure, um, social exclusion, right? Social norms. A lot of times, too, low income can be individual households that they're in the poverty trap. Typically, they already have low levels of income that restrict them from meeting just their basic needs. Whereas to inheritance, it's kind of like a kicker. One way out of poverty is kind of like if somebody hits the lotto. like, um, like I had mentioned earlier, low levels of education, low access to medical care, low access to resources for shelter and food, weak infrastructure, geographic isolation. One of the big ones was Africa. I know we had talked about Africa, and or you had mentioned discussing or researching about Africa. And as far as geographic isolation, that would be one. I was reading on well, I was reading this one book regarding poverty traps, and what it was that, I mean, they did a study giving two big families cows. I mean, completely, you know, different social standards, but from the same environment, low income, hardworking, family members that they have to survive. Well, either way, given the animals, you would think, okay, they were given two cows. This is good to feed your family. You're not allowed to sell it for a couple of years. Yet, in the 2 years, their poverty level, even with the cow having milk to produce, things like that, even with the cow, they were still really on an economic um, trap. Well, poverty trap. That's one of the examples. Um, I guess, and another question, next question was basically analyze key factors that can lead populations into persistent poverty traps, right? Like we talked about limited education, the lack of access to quality education can hinder individuals from acquiring the necessary skills and knowledge, basically to secure a better job um, and improving economic standards, right, or situation. Inadequate health care. These are the cyclical poverty traps. Um, like inadequate health care, poor access. I mean, basically, the lack of infrastructure can lead to high mortality rates. I mean, increased healthcare expenses and reduced productivity, perpetuating kind of like cycling poverty. I am one of those. So if we're going on a personal level of basically what can lead populations into persistent poverty traps. I am from an island. And if, amazingly studying macroeconomics, I never really looked at what our GDP was, what on the island was. we are so poor, and I believe I lived it. I was born and raised on the island of Guam. Um, when I was younger, I basically graduated from high school and came out here. Very lucky, my parents forbid it, but I did leave. I eventually joined the military, which basically gave me a boost. And in my family, I'm still going to school. Um, and yet, if I do graduate from college, I will be the first in my family. My mom works, and I watch her work so hard um, to earn um, $9 to about $15 an hour. Um, and she's been working for 20 years. So it's kind of like a poverty trap, and no matter what, I mean, we have a home. I'm here and I'm blessed to be out here. I I see where it comes from when we talk about poverty trap and having to take care of things. All these years, I've just had a simple explanation of basically it was you can give a man $5,000 or you can give a man $10,000. If the man who makes $10,000 or makes $5,000 doesn't have proper money management, it really doesn't matter. That's been my perspective for so long. And yet here I was thinking that way, yet alone there was something called poverty trap. I mean, health wise, I have friends passing away below the age of 40. Um, Everybody on the island, everybody on Guam, um, basically they have diabetes. I mean, I'm out here and my husband has it. We're both from the island. So, hence why I moved out here. We were military, and why I moved out here was part of a poverty trap that I was really trying to get out of, but in a way got stuck right back in it. Um, because one of the biggest things was, for example, healthcare. We're military. My husband got out of the service. We flew home to Guam. We thought staying on Guam, being around family would be the best for us, except they didn't have the proper healthcare. So I decided to move out here. Moving out here, I did go under food stamps. I did go stay in the Ronald McDonald House for 2 months. Um, and we had money. The problem was emergencies arise and our money did go. We flew here, things like that. So, I mean, those are two, I guess I'm trying to get at cyclical poverty traps and at least two real world examples, right, that exhibit cyclical poverty traps. Um, and that would be it, right? The lack of resources for healthcare. Hence why I'm here. Um, One of the poor countries where I'm from, or place, Guam, which is the U.S. territory, lacked the proper healthcare for my child who is immunodeficient. Even if we were military and possibly had the best healthcare, it wasn't the best for me. So we came out here. Um, and 6 months later, we were very lucky that we had money and we were able to buy a house. So we are trying to break that poverty trap. We don't qualify for food stamps, things like that, but it is harder. Um, but like I said, cyclical poverty trap, there's two. One is the lack of access to quality education, as I've put here on the slide. Um, Normally, when individuals are born into poverty and do not have access to good schools or educational resources, they're less likely to acquire the necessary skills and knowledge, basically, to escape poverty. Um, it basically perpetuates a cycle of poverty, right? Um, so it doesn't secure well-paying jobs or improve the economic situation when the standard of living is at its minimal, right? With the lack of access to quality education. Um, and then another example I put on this on the right hand side is the lack of access to financial services, right? And credit. In many developing countries, individuals and small businesses often don't have access, I mean, to formal banking services or affordable credit. So this limits their ability to invest in income generating activities or start businesses which then lead them to being trapped in poverty. Without access to the financial resources, they're unable to break free from the cycle of poverty and improve the economic prospects, right? Um, so that was one key factor. So here I do have, according to the 2022 data from the U.S. Census, the U.S. poverty rate saw its largest one-year increase in history. 12.4% of Americans now live in poverty, according to the new 2022 data. Um, that's an increase of 7.4% in from compared to 2021. Child poverty also more than doubled last year to 12.4 from 5.2 the year before. The US poverty level is now what, 13,590 for individuals and 23,000 for a family of 3. The new data shows that 37.9 million people lived in poverty in 2023. And that is just amazing to even find out. I mean, we all had like a boost of cash 2020, right? For majority of us, between the lovely, what is it, COVID stimulus. Um, Everybody got a feel to see what it was to make $4,000 a month. I know I did, or $4,500 a month, and not do anything. I thought it would be a good economic growth, right? I always believe that when you have somebody and their goal is, let me try and save $500, they can struggle just trying to save $500. Like for me, okay, well, you got to save it. And then when you feel what it feels like to save 2,000, and when you feel what it feels like to save 20,000, the goals just kind of go bigger. Um, I mean, that's how I believe it's the mindset of what it is, not acquiring or having so much knowledge about poverty traps. So, I mean, and then reading this census, it was amazing too to know, according to the 2023 release, 1.1 billion out of 6.1 billion people, just over 18%, live in acute, multidimensional poverty across 110 countries. Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia are home to approximately 5 out of every 6 poor people. I mean, I would consider myself Asian, right? Because we're in the Pacific Ocean. But that is amazing to see that 5 of every 6 poor people. I mean, that it's just sad to see. I mean, how do I feel about it? I mean, I guess, when we did COVID shots, everybody talked about the government takeover. As I'm starting to read this, you kind of start to understand where the government does control so much, right? I mean, just like buying a house right now. I can't believe how much my house is going for. But yeah, so you look at how much like that. South Asia and Africa are home to approximately 5 out of every 6 poor people. Okay, that's out there. Here in America, we have a lot of resources. Like basically, another next question would be to evaluate government programs, right, that aim to alleviate poverty. And I have to assess basically their strengths and limitations. What we do really feel is are their strengths. So, I mean, let's see. Government programs. We understand what government programs are, right? I mean, from Medicare to food stamp to what is there? There's a lot. I mean, in California, I believe I read it was like 13 affordable housing, whatever they call those things, not whatever, it's called HUD, um, where they have home assistance. Like, so basically, let's see what the government programs are beneficial, which I put, with on the check mark side, and on the X side, I put basically strengths and then limitations between the two. So with the government programs, their strengths are target assistance, right? Now let's look at target assistance. What is target assistance? Government programs can specifically target individuals and families living in poverty, providing them with financial support, health care, education, and other essential services. Wow. Well, that makes sense. I mean, but if a person is making $5 an hour and they're able to qualify for food stamps, I mean, and they're given, an extra $500 in housing, the effort to work harder for me would not be there. So it would be more of, why would I work more if I can receive it, the dependency upon it. So yeah, it's kind of hard to fathom how these government programs actually felt it was beneficial rather than pursuance of a proper education or more money into tech schools and colleges. And I mean, number two would be the safety net, right? These programs, the government programs, they create a safety net for vulnerable populations, helping to prevent extreme poverty and providing a basic level of support. So, I mean, kind of like a couple who ends up getting sick, right? One person gets sick, they can't afford their rent. Okay, they get assistance. Or, they get food stamps in lieu of that. So using more money towards this. So I understand the safety net. The next one I put was poverty reduction. Poverty reduction effective government programs can significantly reduce poverty rates by providing resources and opportunities for those in need. That's what the intention was for all of these government programs. Economic stimulus. So, of course, providing financial assistance to low income individuals, these programs can stimulate economic activity and promote overall economic growth. We saw it in 2020. We saw it with COVID, the economic stimulus brought us really high to what happened. Oh my God, it looked like everybody had hiring signs and nobody was applying. It was crazy. Um, but yes, the benefits of government programs, right? Especially for the low income individuals and for like that when a country goes through a pandemic. Let's see, another government program, limited resources. So for the government programs, the downfall was a lot of the limited resources. They often face budget, right? Budget constraints, limiting the amount of assistance that can be provided, and potentially leaving some individuals without adequate support. Um, there's administrative challenges. Uh, You know, the implementation and management of these programs, they're not that easy. Investigating, doing the legwork to figure out, I mean, and then it causes a lot of inefficiencies and delays in delivering the assistance, right? So the downfalls of the government programs. I think one of this is where my concern was on the government programs is dependency concerns. Um, Gosh, I spelled dependency wrong on this one. Sorry about that. But dependency concerns. So as you can see, some individuals, I mean, like they get discouraged from seeking assistance, but there's also the risk of creating dependency on government support rather than promoting self-sufficiency. The next one I put was inequality and gaps, right? So that was basically, despite efforts to target poverty, government programs may not reach all the individuals in need, leaving certain groups or regions underserved. So overall, though, government programs aimed at alleviating poverty have strengthened their targeted assistance, social safety net, poverty reduction, and economic stimulus. However, they face the limitations due to limited resources, administrative challenges, stigma, and dependency, right? Which then leave gaps in coverage. My next question, obviously, was to offer evidence based policy recommendations that could effectively combat entrenched poverty in communities. So let's just kind of go over it. Entrenched poverty is a complex issue, right? It requires like a multifaceted solution. Um, but let's see. I mean, If we increase access to education and training, how would that look? I mean, it's kind of like I believe education and training are the key factors in breaking the cycle of poverty, providing access to quality education and training programs can possibly help individuals acquire the skills and knowledge they need, right, to secure stable employment and improve their economic situation, like I had mentioned earlier. Um, Also, to implement income support programs. I think income support programs such as, welfare, social assistance can help low income individuals and families. That's what they're there for, is to meet their basic needs and avoid poverty. But they end up providing a safety net, and then, maybe it can help individuals transition into stable employment. I'm sure that was the main reason for the income support programs, right? Um, and then, of course, to invest in affordable housing. Access to affordable housing is crucial for individuals. And I mean, everybody, especially the ones who live in poverty, especially right now with everything high on the rise. It's kind of crazy how high rent is around here. Um, but rent to own programs, those can help, such as, I mean, subsidized housing. I think that's what they called it, to help reduce housing costs and improve financial stability. I mean, I think another thing would be to promote economic development, right? Creating jobs, stimulating the economy. Of course, it sounds so easy, but how do we do it to reduce poverty in communities? It's kind of like giving that entrepreneur that low interest rate and getting a startup a startup job, right? I mean, a startup business. I mean, also, like, let's see ways that we can actually, you know combat this would also be, there's so many. I mean, we can say, hey, let's increase education and training, let's implement more support programs, let's improve access to healthcare, enhance the social infrastructure, and then really let's get down to the point. Address the systemic issues, right? Racism, discrimination, crucial. It's all crucial. Um, if we kind of work to address these systemic issues through policies, programs, and individuals, I think that promote equally with social justice, right? Overall, it does require a multifaceted approach that addresses a range of factors contributing to poverty in communities. But by implementing these evidence based policy recommendations, governments can work to reduce poverty and improve the economic situation of individuals and families living in disadvantaged areas. Really, um, I believe that between the two categories that we had, um, inequality of employment and the comparison to poverty trap, I really believed in this way of don't do it. I mean, even when my child wanted to give money on the side of the road, I was kind of like, don't do it. You're just going to help them. We work hard for that. You can buy them food, but you can't give them cash. Um, and I kind of see where the poverty trap comes from. But breaking out of this cycle and seeing in comparison from Africa to where I'm from, Guam, and being out here, the opportunities for me coming from a little island was like, okay, I'm going to come out to Cali, and there's so much more opportunities. But no matter what, even if you have the opportunities, it is about making the right choices, right? Um, or choosing to be stuck in that poverty trap for us individuals that are out here in the mainland. Versus, of course, if I was still on Guam, it's harder. I can't require that um, my family, as hard as they work, they're still going to be stuck in that world of the minimum wage not being as much. But I really did enjoy this subject of poverty trap. I really did learn a lot. I hope I get a good grade. And thank you, Professor. Have a good day. Bye bye.